Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Kneon. I'm here with Geeky Sparkles.
Hello.
And we've got some breaking news as of like 8 minutes ago. Apparently, Nelson Peltz is going to resume his proxy fight against Disney. He's got some fighting words, and Disney is already responding to it. I think they knew this was coming.
That fast.
That fast.
This is after they appointed 2 new board members, which there's some questionable things there that we're going to talk about.
Yeah, so this whole thing, and this, along with Bob Iger's comments yesterday at that New York Times thing, I think he knew this was going to happen. Mm-hmm. He knew this was going to happen, but basically, yeah, they're in it pretty deep because all their movies have been failures this year.
Yep.
And they're looking at like, we got to fix this company. Like, we got to fix, the investors have to fix this company. Disney is saying that Nelson Peltz is basically trying to carry out a vendetta from Ike Perlmutter, who was the boss of Marvel.
But wait, doesn't make sense because when he was trying to do it the first time, Perlmutter wasn't fired.
Well, they got rid of Perlmutter because they're probably afraid of this scenario. And for those of you who haven't been following the drama, very briefly, Ike Perlmutter was the boss of Marvel for years. He's the one who signed the papers to sell Marvel to Disney. In exchange, he got a bunch of shares. He had input. He oversaw most of Marvel. And then there's always been some butting of heads between him and Kevin Feige. A lot of people at Marvel don't like him because he is an open Republican. In fact, he's a huge Donald Trump fan. Donald Trump signed papers with Ike Perlmutter's pen.
Meanwhile, Kamala Harris comes off the stage at this event and goes hangs out with Iger.
Right.
But it's funny to me though, for all their it's a vendetta. Disney Bob Iger seems to use that vendetta excuse an awful lot.
Everybody's out to get him.
But meanwhile, Meanwhile, they can do whatever, and it's just because it's a company choice for we want to make the right choice. But when everybody else does anything, it's a vendetta.
Yeah, so we'll talk about this because it's really complicated. Perlmutter gave a bunch of his.
I'm sure
shares.
it is a vendetta.
I'm sure it is.
But I'm just saying.
Look, I'm gonna be honest. I would do the exact same thing.
As an
like,
investor,
you fired me. I'm gonna show you what's what.
Well, not just that. As investors, they have vendetta because they're losing a shit ton of money under Iger.
Yeah, that's what Peltz is trying to say now. Peltz has has control of Perlmutter's however many millions of shares he has because he got paid pretty handsomely when he sold off Marvel. So we're gonna talk about this drama and these new board members and what this might mean.
One more thing before we get into any further, it's funny to me because when they were talking to him about Chapek, he said during the transition period he was deliberately pulling back as he saw problems. His job was to help him, and he was and that goes along with what that one article saying Chapek was asking for his opinion. And he wouldn't give him a clear opinion because he was salty. That sounds like a vendetta.
Yeah.
But he has no problem with that when he's, trying to keep, Disney from falling in the first place and didn't do what he was supposed to do. Did he?
Let's talk about this. This is going to get really interesting, guys. Before we get into it any further, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants. Guys, you'll get a woohoo if you do.
Woohoo!
So let's walk it back here real quick. Okay, so before Nelson Peltz revisited the proxy fight, Disney appointed 2 new board members. Let's talk about these board members first.
So yesterday, Disney puts out a press release that they have added 2 new board members. One is James Gorman, who is Morgan Stanley's chief executive. Okay, as of January 1st, he's going to be the executive chairman of Morgan Stanley. Okay. The other one is Jeremy, Durock, who was head up Sky, and now he's doing some other company where he's like at something in Durock, and he's doing that. What's interesting is they appointed them to the board trying to stop these activist investors like Peltz and then that Value Act. But what's interesting is, and that could be unrelated. I'm not saying it's related. I'm just saying it things that make you go, and it's a bad optic. Is that, how Comcast and Disney were trying to get valuations on Hulu to decide how much money they get? Of course, Comcast wants more money. Disney wants the number to be lower, Comcast, for their valuation, had hired Morgan Stanley. And now the Morgan Stanley guy is suddenly getting a board seat at Disney. I'm not saying that they're connected, but it's, it doesn't look good.
Well, then every time they do an investor call, they're always letting Morgan Stanley.
Oh, yes, always.
Or JP Morgan Chase or whatever.
Or Nathan Moffatson.
Yeah, right. There's like 3 or 4 people they're allowed to ask questions. It's kind of like, oh, look, one of the teacher's pets got to be the class president or got to be
yeah,
the assistant.
because they're the
or got to be
biggest. They
yes.
always get to ask.
Yes.
Now the other guy comes from Sky TV. Sky TV had a long history of Disney because Disney Channel was on Sky TV.
Yeah.
Until they pulled it for Disney Plus.
So it sounds to me like what they were doing, and there definitely does seem to be some kind of a conflict of interest here. But it sounds to me like what they're trying to do is shore up their defenses, because he said yesterday or the day before, whenever it was, New York Times book thing where Elon Musk told him to go F himself. He said that, it's not like we have a lot of empty board seats. Well, hurry up, put some guys on the board.
One guy said he wasn't renewing in the spring, so there was going to be a seat empty. And now they add these two guys to the board. So they're like preemptively trying to put their buddies in, people who will vote the way they want, who have the same vision they have, who are their friends, into the seats to try to avoid these activist investors, mostly Peltz, from taking the seats.
So that brings us to what's going on right now, that Nelson Peltz said he's going to restart this proxy war. They kind of pushed him back for a while. They said, hey, Nelson, we have a plan. Look at all these fantastic movies that are coming out this year. And he's probably sitting back because in the case of the Marvels especially, Ike Perlmutter was probably, his good buddy Ike Perlmutter was probably telling him, like, this shit's going to fail. Like, I told them it was going to fail, and they went ahead and did it, because apparently he was the holdout, and part of the issue that was between him and Feige was he did not want a Captain Marvel movie, because he's like, Captain Marvel is not a character that's going to be able to carry the franchise.
And that has to go MCU.
And they spun it as Nelson Peltz doesn't want any female superheroes in the MCU. He's just like, no, not because Captain Marvel, basically they just brought her back like in 2014, 2015.
Well, Captain Marvel wasn't doing well in the comic sales, and then Captain Marvel only did well. People argued this when it happened, and they said, no, that wasn't true. Did well because it was shoehorned in between two big end of the whole 10-year saga movies.
Yes.
And people thought you had to see it because they implied you did.
Yeah.
The one movie. Yeah. So they thought it was going to tie the story in. But then when it has to stand on its own 2 feet, and with help from other characters, it cannot do so. That's the point. It was never a good idea.
How many female superheroes does it take to destroy a franchise? And they've replaced all the characters that people cared about with a bunch of stand-ins, and it's just not going very well. So he probably just sat back and he's like, what?
Well, he wasn't, though, because he said he walked back the last time when Iger said he was going to do layoffs. Okay. Yeah. He comes back with the extra stocks and Peltz's shares and stuff after Peltz got canned, but that's been recent. This isn't a new thing. He said he was going to go for a board seat, so he was already reactivating it before this. But now I think he's doubling down on the reactivation.
And the thing is, I think if they take it to shareholders, I think Disney's going to lose this one. I think the shareholders are tired of Disney stock being down. Now there was a little bit of a bump.
That was when Value Net or whatever they announced they were going to. Because I guess that whenever they come in, they oftentimes help companies and they actually do better.
Oh, Value Act.
Or Value Act. Yeah. Value Act. When Value Act was coming in, they, I guess, are known for that. So people were, oh, yay, And when Peltz announced that he was going to go get the stock bumped up as well. Now, it was down a few days ago. It went up a little bit but yesterday, but then after some of the comments Iger made and everything else, it went down again. No, not like it was before, but it's up and down.
So Disney, at this point, the only way Disney is going to be safe in the long term, in my opinion, is if they get sold or they get reorganized top to bottom. They gut the board. They take a look at everything, Star Wars, Marvel, everything. Either they fix it or they sell it. Because if they can't fix it, they need to sell it. And they need to focus on.
But they won't, because they Star Wars and Marvel are like, they have whole lands dedicated to it in the parks. And they're part of the expansions and everything else. They're not going to sell it.
You just have whoever buys the property, you just have them lease the rights to it. Say this is part of the deal. Like, you get to buy Star Wars, but we get to have Star Wars in our
They
theme
won't
parks.
go with it because they'll be like, we want to be in control. I don't see them doing it. And especially after the big stink they made about what they did to George Lucas. And they're like, well, we had to and everything else. They're not going to. Because especially Iger, well, at least under Iger, I don't think it will be the case unless he's forced to, because he made those deals and he won't want to walk those deals back because it'll look bad for him.
Well, that's it. Iger is concerned about his legacy, and it's funny because they had a friend of his say, hey, the best thing he could have done to save his legacy is not come back because there's no fixing this. So yeah, this is coming from the Hollywood Reporter. Disney's going to have to deal with a new proxy fight as activist investor Nelson Peltz is going to seek board seats.
Well, they already has been. I guess he's just doubling down.
At the company. Peltz's Triam partners said Thursday morning having not received a warm welcome from Disney's board of directors from CEO Bob Iger, that Trian intends to take our case for change directly to shareholders. Disney's next shareholder meeting is going to take place in the spring.
So they're probably going to start contacting bigger shareholders to try to get support and stuff like that.
Trian said that it spoke with Iger this week and that Disney extended an offer for Trian to meet with its board of directors. However, the board also said that it would not extend an offer for Peltz to join it as director. Of course not.
Well, he's not going to be his director. I mean, the seat maybe, but director. And then they heard him announce these people.
Yes. So this was preemptive. They knew this was coming. Mm-hmm. They probably knew full well that, like, look, all of our movies have been released for the year. Wish was a failure. The Marvels was a failure. Everything we've done this year, with the exception of Guardians 3, was a massive, massive failure. And Peltz is probably just sitting back eating popcorn. Like, well, yep, just hang yourself. Hang yourself, Disney.
I'm just sitting here like, as investors, people that are probably investors are like, what the hell? You guys have to do something. When the stock goes up just on the news that investors might be trying to get seats, big investment groups, that tells you that the shareholders aren't happy.
Well, here's what he said. This is what he said. Since we gave Disney the opportunity to prove it could right the ship last February, up to our re-engagement weeks ago, shareholders lost $70 billion of value. Mm-hmm. They said in the statement, investor confidence is low. Key strategic questions loom, and even Disney CEO is acknowledging that the company's challenges are greater than previously believed. That was recently. They basically said that, they're like, the content that we're producing, it doesn't quite mesh up with what the American people want.
If only people had tried to tell them otherwise. But y'all said they were haters and, sent your people after them and then didn't give them media access anymore.
Now, they do address the board members. They said, James Gorman and Sir Jeremy Darroch represent an improvement from the status quo. The addition of these directors will not, in our view, restore investor confidence or address the root cause behind the significant value destruction and missteps that this board has overseen.
Well, the board picked these people.
Yeah.
So so if you have a group that is making bad decisions, and then you're like, that's okay, we're adding more people that we pick. How's that going to fix it?
It's not. There's no way that they're saying that so they're going to take the case for change directly to the shareholders.
Thing is, I don't know. I'd be completely honest. I don't think Trian is the right answer either.
No.
I think that they're going to go too far the other direction. But then again, there's one voice on the board, so it's going to balance. But I'm just like, I don't think either solution sounds great, personally.
They said I think Disney needs to be gutted top to bottom.
That I do agree with.
The problem is, I think at this point, I'm going to be honest, what is the most likely scenario is if there is a major change at Disney without Walt Disney, or at least a Disney at the company. And I'm not talking Abigail Disney either, because she's kind of like out to lunch. But there is no Disney family member in charge. This company is going to be sold for parts. They're going to break it down, break it up, and it's going to be sold off for parts.
I don't think a Disney family member being in charge has anything to do with it. They have nobody on the board now.
They don't have the emotional attachment to it. They don't have because up until Iger came in, they had Roy Disney was
right, but they haven't for years.
No, but that's when the decline started. In my opinion, that's when the decline started, was when they took the Disney out of Disney. And there's no attachment at all to Walt. It's just a collection of IP.
I get that, but it's been so long since they've been around that people won't, no one remembers that for the most part anyway. Like, I don't think that's related. They're going to do what they're going to do because the company because investors run everything.
It's not the Walt Disney Company. It's basically, this is a corporation that owns a bunch of IP.
Yes.
Disney IP, Star Wars IP, Marvel, a conglomerate. They basically are a collection of, just portfolios of stuff that was created by people that actually had vision, and now they're trying to oversee this stuff, and it's not working very well.
It went from people who wanted to make things because they wanted to make things for art or families or whatever, or entertainment, to we got to make things based by committee and what will make money.
Yeah, there's no vision. They're just.
But I don't think a Disney being there has anything to do with it at this point, because it's been so long since one has been.
I don't think there are any Disneys left that have any creativity. Abigail Disney is not a creative person. She's an activist. She's, it's a real shame, because I would love for there to be, the great-great-grandson of Walt Disney or whatever, great-great-great-grandson, being like, okay, I have as much insight and drive as my ancestors did.
But here's the thing. I think that's more like a you want type situation.
That's exactly what I want.
Not necessarily what, is the reality of the situation.
Okay, but the reality, again, this is my opinion, but the reality is for this company to be what Disney fans want it to be, you need to have somebody like Walt there.
There, I agree
John
with you.
Lasseter. John Lasseter was the closest thing they had to having somebody like Walt there that had creative vision. All those people left or got gone or got pushed out. There's no creativity left.
I agree with you, but if we're giving creativity back to the creatives. It's like, but the creatives aren't even creative anymore.
Let's do Frozen 4, 5, 6, and 7.
Let's keep this.
We only do sequels when there's a storytelling reason. The story is the story
money
that we tell our investors that things are fine. They said Disney said that they're going to supposedly approach pre-COVID levels in fiscal 2024. There's no way in hell. They owe tons of money on Disney Plus already. They're going to owe Comcast a bunch of money. Their movie revenue was abysmal. Like, how many hundreds of millions of dollars did they lose just this year alone? I mean, The Marvels was $250 million, and they lost a bunch of money on that.
The only thing that's been done well was Avatar, and that was last year to this year, and maybe Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, and it still wasn't like super gangbusters.
Yeah, so this is Disney's response to this about Peltz. Mr. Peltz, in partnership with Ike Perlmutter, a former Disney executive, intends to take his case to shareholders. Mr. Perlmutter owns 78% of the shares that Mr. Peltz claims beneficial ownership of, or more than 25 million of the 33 million shares. Disney's statement continued, "This dynamic is relevant to assessing Mr. Peltz and any other nominees he may put forth as directors, as Mr. Perlmutter was terminated from his employment by Disney earlier this year and has voiced his longstanding personal agenda against Bob Iger."
Well, that sounds to me like you admit you fired him for reasons because he doesn't like Bob Iger. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like you admit you fired him, and it wasn't because necessarily, he had a reason to fire, because you were supposed to be laying people off, right? You were laying people off because you had to save money, and he was one of those layoffs. But you just got done saying we fired his ass, and he's mad at Bob Iger. Well, that sounds like Bob Iger had a vendetta against Perlmutter to fire him in the first place, doesn't it? Seems like there's a lot of vendetta to go around here.
I think he was getting in the way. I think that this actually could blow up in Bob Iger's face, because they might be like, okay, so obviously, Mr. Iger, you have ties to the Democrats. And
you have a personal agenda against Perlmutter.
Right. And you have, because there's a whole, I'm sure there's lots and lots and lots of documentation of back and forth between Perlmutter and Feige. And we don't know where, like, Victoria Alonso fit into this crap with Marvel. And, it's a huge mess. But regardless of that, he still controls 33 million shares. And he's not the only one. They're saying, oh, his opinions might be different than that of our other shareholders. No, everybody, even the mainstream media, is like, what the hell is wrong with Disney? Why is Disney so broken? And if you go to the shareholders, you say, hey, we are top to bottom. We're gonna fix this, because we have to fix Disney, because look at failure after failure. That's all you got to do. Just point to their failure. Just this year alone, since Bob Iger has returned, almost every damn movie they put out has been a failure.
A lot of the things that they brought Bob Iger back for, I said Chapek failed on, were stuff that Iger initiated. So failure after failure is tied to Iger in some way.
And that's the thing. Most of these movies that bombed this year were actually greenlit on his watch. And he's trying to walk it back now. And we've got another video coming up about Nia DaCosta and the Marvels and all that, but trying to blame everybody but himself. But I'm like, you're the one who greenlit this shit.
Well, it just gets me that they're like, well, this is a personal vendetta because he's mad because they fired him, and he was terminated. You said that's firing. You said that he was part of the layoffs, that you were laying off. So all those other people were just terminated. Yeah. I'm like, that one guy was. So you're admitting that you terminated him. After his friend didn't win walked back the proxy thing, then you fired him. You're admitting that, and then saying that he has a vendetta against you, but you must have had one in the first place to fire him to begin with.
So this is going to get really ugly, guys.
Hotter kettle there, Bob.
This is, look, if you're
toot,
motherfucker. If so, he's got Elon Musk telling him to go F himself, and now he's got Ike Perlmutter, the former head of Marvel, telling him to basically go F himself.
He probably wished this Zagati hadn't come back.
His friend was even like, that was the worst thing, because he could have left on a high note, and now he's coming back in and trying to fix. But again, the Roosters are coming home, because these are all problems that were created by Bob Iger. The massive amounts of debt, buying IP that they fundamentally do not understand. And ruining them. Putting people in charge who don't care about the IP, they just want the platform. And mingling politics, because it's very clear that Bob Iger...
Oh, he mingled it all the time before the Florida parental rights bill.
He wanted to be president. I mean, people said he was looking to run for president.
A lot of people brought the fact that he jumped right in with the Disney company for other leftist agenda things, things that happened. They sided with different groups, and now they're pulling funding off of X because, well, you shouldn't get involved in that. But they've gotten involved in it many times before.
Yeah, it's and again, I think they need to oust Bob Iger. I don't know who.
He admitted that he stepped away on purpose when there was a transition period with Bob Chapek. So you admit that article is correct then. Because you said basically he was coming to you for advice, and he said he couldn't understand what you were saying because you were deliberately being vague, and like you deliberately were not helping because you were pissed and you were mad he wasn't doing what you wanted him to do. So you were deliberately trying. You and then that chairman of the board putting the company into crap. You're trying to start because they're for your own personal gains. And then I'm not saying Chapek's innocent by any means. I'm just saying these people put their own personal feelings and gains above the company. And it's okay when they do it. When anybody else does it, it's just because of, vendetta.
Yeah, this is going to be a mess, guys. This is going to be a mess.
I'm just here for the... honestly, I don't think trying's necessarily the best thing either. But I'm not going to lie. I'm just sitting here with popcorn and throwing kerosene on that fire just to see what happens. I need to pop my popcorn, right? I need a bigger fire.
Yeah, Disney deserves to get spanked.
We're going real genius levels of popcorn here. People are like, what the hell does that mean? Some of you know what it means. And I'm just
Google it.
I'm just like, and all I'm sitting here doing is, break out the lasers, bitch. We need to turn the heat up. Because I just want to, I'm not going to lie. In this situation, I'm just like, let's throw kerosene on it. All right. By pointing out the obvious.
Let's wrap this one up, guys. Yep. So yeah, we're going to keep an eye on this for sure. Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants. We'll talk later.
Bye.